and the nose to be broken. So we have evidence of trauma at or about the time of death. The heavy, high cheekbones suggest Native American ancestry, and the teeth themselves suggest white ancestry, indicating a racially admixed individual. The only person who fits this description is Mitch Boyer, Custer's scout, who was killed at the Little Bighorn.
When the bone fragment is superimposed on a picture of Mitch Boyer, the match is uncanny. It was Mitch Boyer who saved the life of Joe Medicine Crow's grandfather when he told the scouts to leave. His remains were found below Custer Hill, near to a place called Deep Ravine. Indian accounts speak of 28 men buried there, but there are no grave markers. Was this the last stand of the Little Bighorn?
This is the upper reaches of Deep Ravine. The last fighting took place here. We have Indian cartridge cases up along the sides of the ravine here, indicating Indians firing down at soldiers who were trying to hide, to escape, to evade. And we also have historical accounts, Indian and white, talking about soldiers' bodies found down here. The mystery of Deep Ravine is simply, where are the men who died here? And we have looked, but haven't yet found them. Somewhere, perhaps where we're standing, are 28 bodies, maybe more, waiting to be found. It must have been a frightening experience. It must have been terrible. My feeling is war is terrible. It's a horrible thing, and people had to die. People had to defend. Too bad it had to happen that way.
The last fighting was at Deep Ravine, not Custer Hill. There was no heroic last stand.
We believe this to be Vincent Charlie, a soldier who died at the Little Bighorn. He represents one of 268 men killed at the Little Bighorn. He was foreign-born, just like 40% of the soldiers were. Swiss immigrant. He's a little taller than average at 5'10", give or take a little bit, and he's a little older, in between 25 and 30 years of age, when most were only around 22. So he does really represent many of these people. So to put a face on this skull allows us to see one person who lived and died at the Little Bighorn.
I like him. I think he's somebody I'd like to know.
Vincent Charlie is now reunited with his fellow troopers in the mass grave at the Little Bighorn battlefield. Custer's remains are said to lie at West Point. More than 50 Indian warriors and an unknown number of Indian women and children also died that day.
The reason why the Indians finally decided to make their last stand, because they were being pushed out of their land and massacred from here and there. So it was Sitting Bull's last stand, not Custer's last stand.
The work of Douglas Scott and Richard Fox has confirmed the Indian stories. Now, after more than a century, the battlefield recognizes not just their oral history, but also their fallen dead. In June 1876, Lakota and Cheyenne warriors defeated Custer's 7th Cavalry. But their victory was short-lived. Never again would the Northern Plains Indians have the freedom of the plains. It was the beginning of the end of their way of life.
I found this piece of metal in my arm. I don't know how it got in my body.
Is this an abduction hoax?
I mean, this whole thing may be an amazing put-on.
Or is it the first historic proof of...
They showed their